Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. This is Katie Weaver. I am here with my co host in crime, Christy Brower.
Hey,
We're,
everybody.
we're so excited to bring our next edition to you guys. Last week was our maiden voyage, of course, and we talked all about the Dyatlov Pass incident and had a lot of fun with it. One thing we learned was that you guys want to talk about it.
Yeah,
And so we've done
definitely.
something, yeah, which is great because, we've come from the live radio land where you have a chat room. And
Yeah.
while you present your show, everybody's chatting about it. So a lot of our friends coming from live radio land here with us want to talk about it. So we have provided a place. And that place is a private chat group or a private group, sorry, over on Facebook. You can find it. All you have to do is search True Crime Paranormal Podcast with the Psychic Sisters. That's wrong. True Crime.
Yep.
As soon as I
That's
said it,
our fan page. If you hadn't found it, that's a good place to go too.
true, and you would find it there. The actual group is called True Crime Paranormal Podcast Discussion Group.
Yes.
And if you ask to join, we don't even have to approve you. You can join the group and you'll read through our little set of rules there because, people on the internet want to be kind of jerky and, we're not down with that. But we would love it if you guys wanted to come over here, talk about the cases with us. If you know of a case that you think would be interesting, we'd love to talk to you about it. Definitely come listen, come play. It'll be a fun group for people to, I think, collaborate and just have some interesting discussions.
Well, it's also a great place to share a case that you want us to cover. And we've already got a couple of those suggested. So if you have something, a true crime case with a paranormal element that you would like us to cover, please go to the group, share it in there. We'll do the research, and one of these days we'll cover it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most interesting parts of doing this podcast is the research on cases,
Oh, yeah.
And we've talked a lot about this on other platforms, but there's a really interesting national case rolling out in my town right now.
Yeah.
And in the town that Christy and I were raised in. And if I say the name, you guys will know this is the Lori Vallow Daybell case of the missing children. And most of you have heard about this on the news. It's a huge national case. And my daughter is a student reporter she's the editor of her high school newspaper. So she's taken big interest in this case. And she's been covering it. She's had the opportunity to be in on like big press conferences and rub shoulders with all of these big news names. It's been pretty cool. And I have to say that a lot of them have been super, super good to her.
Yeah.
And, made sure she was up front and center where she needed to be to get her picture, to get her, her story. But anyway, as life goes when you are 17, your parents have to help you with a lot of stuff. So I have been on 3 stakeouts this week.
Who knew?
On this case. Yeah. So we knew that she was being extradited into town early in the week. There seemed to be some kind of a hubbub that happened at the jail on Sunday night. And a friend called her and said, "You better get over here. There's reporters, there's police cars, something's happening." So I was in my pajamas, you guys, eating dinner. So we literally got in the car in pajamas with dinner in hand and went over there. And whatever was happening had subsided. There was some press there, but the police were gone. It didn't seem like anything was happening, but we still sat and watched and waited for about an hour and finally gave up and went home. Well, then our contact let us know that she really was going to be coming in a little later in the week. We ended up on Wednesday night with some bad intel that she'd be coming around 4 a.m. So we got up on Thursday morning at 3:45. She and I got up, threw clothes on, drove to the jail, ran through a Maverick and got coffee, and waited until 7. We were the only reporters there, so we were pretty sure we were wrong. But what if? So about 6 o'clock, an unmarked bus pulled up in front of the jail. And we were sitting in the door that we were told that she would come in, not, kind of off the beaten path. So this bus pulls up and we're like, oh my God, it's happening. So I'm recording video. She's taking pictures. We're like, we're going to scoop this story. Look what's happening. No one else is here. And so we wait and we wait and we we take pictures of the bus and of the door opening and of the police officer standing there. And we're waiting for them to pull her off of this bus and bring her into the jail. And it took a while. And I mean, we took a lot of pictures. We were so excited. Well, pretty soon the jail door opened and a whole bunch of inmates came out and got on the bus and left because apparently that was the
Oh.
work detail, not Lori Vallow. So
Oh, sometimes
sad
being a
day.
reporter is tough.
We were so embarrassed because we took all those pictures and video, and we were thinking, "Oh my god, the jail is probably dying laughing."
Probably.
I'm sure they know why we're here, so they are probably they think that's hilarious. But
Yeah.
anyway, I was actually told I was never to speak of that, but I just did. It's the life of a
Well,
reporter, man. You got to
that's
jump on everything,
that's
right?
the commitment right there.
Yeah. So then, as any 17-year-old does, she had to go to school. She actually had to go to the doctor and then to school
Oh,
for her softball physical. And so we went to the doctor. She went to school, made her dad promise that we would still try to get pictures for her. So at noon, we headed back over to the jail. There was a ton of media over there. We knew she was coming in, but we just didn't know exactly what time. But her dad finally went, why is she not here? I don't care if she has school. This is more important today.
yeah.
So we called her, and she and one of her reporter friends came over and hung out. And there were two false alarms when just, basic people that were getting booked into the jail showed up, and all of the reporters, mobbed the jail door, and it wasn't Lori. And then finally later in the day, we really did get our video and our story. So that was great. But then she had court yesterday for the first time here in Rexburg. They lowered her bail to $1 million. It wasn't $5 million. And people are really upset about that. But in truth, that's still a really high bail for the charges she's facing.
Oh, so high.
And so,
Well, and so high for here. I mean,
oh, yeah.
that is not
Mhm.
a bond that you see for anybody.
Right. I was told yesterday there's been 2 murders tried at that jail in rememberable history, and
Mhm.
both of those murders, both on murder charges, were set at $1 million. And she's
Wow.
not charged with murder, you guys, not yet,
No,
because they
yeah.
have no idea where the hell these kids are. What she's charged with is child abandonment and obstructing, and a handful of misdemeanors, 2 felonies and a handful of misdemeanors. Her lawyers argued hard to get it lowered to $10,000.
Oh,
There would have been a
so
riot.
crazy. Yeah, there would have been. And I think that when this case kind of resolves, we should cover it
I do
because
too.
there are actually some paranormal elements to this case.
Oh, some big ones, some big
Some
ones.
big
So we'll
ones,
get
and
there.
we
Yeah.
will. And it's interesting because it's the only case we might ever cover where we are watching it unfold
Mhm.
in our area. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be coming here
Oh,
on the
yeah,
show.
totally. We don't wanna do a psychic analysis on it until what we're saying isn't going to injure family members,
Right.
because
Yeah,
we're not
we
going
have
to
to
be
be
a part
careful
of the
about that.
problem and be unethical. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's how I've spent my week. But last night she was supposed to be bailing out. So Mars was back at the jail for 5 hours waiting for her to bail out. We didn't join the stakeout. We just brought McDonald's. But
There you go.
she finally left at 1 o'clock this morning. And then another reporter reported that she actually never did bail out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, so that's how my week has
Turns out
gone. And
bondsmen around here aren't really keen on taking on $1 million bond. So
well, especially for
we'll
someone who was
see.
just extradited because she fled already. She already
Yeah.
fled to Hawaii once,
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, so
Ah,
that's the true crime way my week has gone.
yeah. And that is a major teaser for when we cover this
Mhm.
story, it's going to be a multi-episode
Yeah,
cover, I'm
it
sure,
will have
because
to be.
it is
Mhm,
such a huge story and there are so many elements and so many people involved
mhm.
and so many deaths involved
Yeah,
already.
yep,
So yeah, but
yep,
I can't wait for us to cover it.
yeah. You will need an enormous, Zen, well, probably not
Like a
that
Venn
kind, but like a
diagram.
flow chart. Yeah, Venn,
Yeah.
not Zen.
You're gonna
You
need to
know,
put a big whiteboard up in your house
I know.
to keep
Like
track of
I
all the
already
players.
do. I know. It's bananas.
Yeah.
So we will talk about it later for sure. But yeah, it's been quite the week on all these takeouts at the jail. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Very, very
crime
interesting.
crime going down, bro. But
Mhm.
but the actual case we're covering today is a murder that happened. This was a murder of two sisters that happened in Chicago in the 50s. So it was 1956,
Yeah.
and these were two girls. So these were the Grimes murders, Patricia and Barbara Grimes. Depending on what article you read, they were 12 and 15 or they were 13 and 15.
Yeah,
There's
as is
a
so typical in this stuff.
yep. Little discrepancy on how old they were. But at any rate, Barbara was 12 or 13. Patricia was 15, I believe. So that's how that. So these girls in Chicago, they were huge Elvis fans. They're teenagers of the time. I mean, Elvis was all that, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
his movie Love Me Tender was at the theater. And they had apparently already gone to this movie more than 10 times. According to their mama, they had been more than 10 times. These kids didn't have internet that they could just watch, YouTube videos and whatever they wanted constantly. This was their big jam. So
Yeah.
they got money from mom. They had dinner at home. They got money from mom. They went to the movie and they never came home.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. So their mother's name was Loretta Grimes, and she died in 1989. She was 83 years old, died not knowing what happened to her girls, was an absolute rock star, clear up to their deaths,
Oh, yeah.
continuing to search for answers. The Chicago PD reports that they still have a letter mounted on the wall in their offices that she wrote to them many, many years after the fact, just reminding them of her daughters and encouraging them to never, ever give up, which I thought was pretty cool. But,
Yeah.
that they still have that letter on the wall to remind them that these cold cases, these are someone's children, this is someone's family, this was someone's life,
Yeah.
and they still deserve attention. So, anyway, it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal in Chicago at the time. Unfortunately, violence against women has gotten to be a lot more commonplace. We have so much crime in this country these days, and I think just more access to it because of the internet. But in their
Yeah. Oh,
neighborhood in
yeah.
Chicago at the time, this was the most frightening, unheard of, shocking thing that you can fathom happening. Kind of like probably what's happening in Rexburg right now. But,
Right. Yeah,
you
similar
know,
because we're not used to that kind of crime here either.
yeah,
I mean,
totally.
not that we don't have violence against women, we certainly do, but,
Yeah.
missing children and multiple
Yeah.
deaths around the
Yeah.
situation. I mean, we just don't have that kind of stuff around
Yeah.
here usually.
So, an interesting fact about this case was that there was a belief that they had run away to Nashville to try to meet Elvis Presley.
Right.
And their mom was absolutely opposed to that idea. She said, "There's no way in hell these kids ran away. First of all," and this killed me, she said, "there is no way they would have left the new AM radio they got for Christmas."
Hey,
Which,
that was
right?
the smartphone of the day, man.
That's what I thought. That would be like a teenager of today running away without their iPhone. Not gonna
Right?
happen. I
Yeah.
just thought that was so sweet. Anyway,
Yeah.
but word got to Elvis that these girls were missing. There had been sightings, and this is a big weird part of this case that we'll get into, but there had been sightings of them um, traveling and in Nashville. And so those were tips that had been called in. Elvis actually did a radio broadcast urging these girls to go home. He said, good Elvis Presley fans would turn around and go home and quit worrying their mother.
Yeah, yes.
So, very kind of him to care and get involved. Unfortunately, these girls were very dead by the time Elvis did that. But
Yeah.
2 weeks after their death, their bodies were found. This gentleman was driving down the road. They apparently had a bunch of snow and it was starting to melt. So he was driving down the road and he saw what looked like two mannequins along the side of the road.
Now, I
I
gotta
wasn't
say,
sure.
to quote my favorite true crime podcast, Crime Junkies, it's never a mannequin. Right? It's never
For
a
real.
mannequin.
It's
It's
never a
laying on the side of the
mannequin.
road. It's not a mannequin.
So it scares this guy. And so to get a little braver, he goes home and gets his wife. This only kills me because my husband would, I hope, know better.
Right? Like, this is serious business, man. Call the cops.
There might be dead bodies out there. I think my wife needs a look at this. But so they get out of the car and they start inching a little closer and a little closer. And what they discover is that indeed it is two very dead, naked teenagers that have had their faces mutilated a little by what they think was just neighborhood animals.
Yeah.
At any rate, it was so horrifying to the wife that she was unable to even walk back to the car and had to be carried. So
I'm sure she was like, thanks a lot for going home to get me,
right.
to show me this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, on the other hand, would have been catatonic,
Oh,
as you
yeah.
are such a fan of dead things.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
this
would
not have
hope
been
your husband would know better than to do that to
me too. When I read this, I went, "What the hell was he thinking?"
you. Right? Dude, come on.
Right. I know. Christy, it was my same thought. I thought I would really hope that my husband would know damn well that that would be absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Right.
But anyway, so the police gather up their bodies, literally had to put them in holding and allow them to thaw before they could, start autopsies. They were well preserved because they'd been frozen for 2 weeks, but what they determined is that they died around 5 hours after they left home. So they went to the movie, and they did go to the movie by most accounts, or by all accounts. People are saying that, yes, they were seen at the movie by lots of neighborhood people that knew them. So they did go to the first showing of the movie. And then a lot of witnesses came forward and said they saw them getting in a car with two men. And that's pretty much where the trail goes cold. And the clues get really weird because people just, all of the tips came in were so very different. But they do believe that the forensics are correct. I question the forensics because I'm like 1950s,
Yeah.
how the hell do they know? But here's how they know. The contents of their stomachs, this is so nasty, so I'm sorry, but this is forensics for us.
Right.
The contents of their stomachs was identical to what their mom fed them for dinner. So that's how they know they hadn't even digested their dinners
they
yet.
didn't live long enough to even digest their dinner.
Yeah. The odd thing is that the medical examiner actually, or the coroner actually did not report their deaths as murders. He reported them as that they succumbed to the elements. They don't know.
What?
They
Naked
don't know.
on the side of the road, stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. They don't know. And the reason they don't, well, there's very little damage to their bodies. It's not like they appeared like they were beat. One of the sisters Barbara had indications that she had had sexual intercourse, but there was no indication that it was or wasn't consensual. They don't know, except for that, again, these were little girls, And so, anyway.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, I have questions about if they were injured and then immediately dead and then frozen. How does that change marks on the body? Would the bruising not really show up? I just Googled it because I was curious about how long the movie was. And the movie was an hour and a half long.
An hour and a half. So around 3.5 hours after the movie.
Yeah.
They were dead.
Yeah.
So the doctors that that examined their bodies were super puzzled because they're like, nothing gave them any indication that, there weren't any bullet or stab wounds or signs of strangulation. I still wondered if they were suffocated, if that would show less of but I don't know. What the doctor said, it was that the killer was diabolically clever. Their words. Yeah.
Ooh, well, and you wonder about if they were autopsied now versus then, because I know there are ways to suffocate someone. I know ways.
Yeah.
Because I'm a true crime junkie. Yeah. I know ways that there are ways to suffocate somebody that doesn't show on an autopsy, like pressure on their chest can do it. There's lots of things. So I just, I don't know. I really question that. They
Me
died naked
too.
laying on top of each other on the side of the road in the elements. I mean, come on,
Right.
that did not
Right.
happen.
Well, and apparently one of the coroners in the case did not agree with the findings. And
Yeah.
he actually made a public statement that got him fired over it because he felt like they were downplaying some injuries that they did have and really weren't totally clear,
Yeah.
about what they were looking at. So I thought that was pretty fascinating as
Do you
well.
think
But
at that time maybe they just really wanted it to be they died of the elements because they didn't want to think that they had a double child murderer on the loose in their town and it was sort of convenient?
maybe, I mean, one of the things that I learned is that a year or so before this, 3 teenage boys were killed in the exact same way from that
Yeah.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
naked and thrown off to the side of the road
Yeah.
and missing
And
for a
they were
while.
beat up, right? They had a lot more
They were
injuries.
beat up, yes. But I thought, yeah, but maybe they fought back in a way that these girls did not, you
Mhm.
know? I wondered how terrified these girls were if they just really weren't able to really
Yeah,
fight
maybe they
back.
just froze because that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So those are the things that we know. They were buried in matching white caskets with pictures of them on top of the caskets, and the funeral was really disrupted by the media. Apparently, the media was pretty shitty about all of this. They caused quite the firestorm and frenzy in Chicago. They harassed the Grimes family until it is just unthinkable.
Well, they kinda
And
treated them like they were loose women, didn't they?
yeah. Oh yeah. The press spread a lot of really cruel rumors about these girls. And again, 12 years old,
Yeah.
because one of the theories, one of the things that happened is that there was a man who confessed. And he
A man who
confessed.
looked like Elvis.
A man who looked like Elvis. Correct. A man who looked like Elvis confessed. He was, I got to find his name. I don't have it written down now. He was never convicted because they eventually decided that he really didn't actually do it. His name was Benny Bedwell.
Yeah.
And apparently, he was reportedly seen with the girls in restaurants for a few days after what should have been their deaths. People reported seeing him and another man in restaurants, at hotels, and in bars with these 2 girls. And I'm like, hold the freaking phone. She was 12. She
Yeah.
was hanging out in bars with men, like,
And 15,
the
like,
fuck?
yeah,
Yeah.
that wasn't happening.
Right? I mean, a lot of this makes me go, "What the hell?" But anyway, he says that so when the police pulled him in for questioning, he says that, yes, that he, partied with the girls for days. Again, partied? What? With
Yeah.
the girls for days with a friend of his, and that eventually they knocked them out and left them naked in the snow to die. There was no blunt force trauma to these girls' heads to indicate that
Right.
they had been knocked out. But again, that would indicate that they lived for several days beyond what the medical examiners say. Eventually, Benny Bidwell did say he didn't really do it, but the police were so cruel to him in their tactics that they were torturing him and, whatever, that he finally just uh, admitted to it, it claimed that he did it because he was just confessed because he was just trying to end what was happening with the police.
Yeah.
Which again, you go, how mistreated was this case? It was such a frenzy that how mistreated was this case? But
Yeah.
anyway, so he says he didn't do it. There was another man who called the police and said, and this was before they ever found the girls, he called the police and told them that he knew where the bodies were.
Yeah.
And the police didn't find the bodies there because they were buried in snow, but he was correct.
Yeah.
And his name was Walter Krantz, but he says that he saw them in a dream, and that's how he knew where their bodies were. And so he called the police, said, I know where their bodies were. I had a dream. And the police questioned him. They did bring him in, but there was no tie to him to the case at all. And they didn't find their
Yeah.
bodies there. But my understanding is they actually were right within the vicinity that he said they were.
Yeah.
That is where they found them.
Yeah.
But he didn't actually do it. So there was another man who had called Mrs. Grimes. This is so terrible. She had a
Mhm.
bunch of people call her, tell
Yeah.
her that they had done it, say all kinds of horrible things. Again, what the hell?
Yeah.
Now, people wouldn't get away with that without their numbers being traced. But in
Right.
1953, we just didn't have the
6.
tech we have. Six. Yeah, we don't have the
Yeah.
tech.
Yeah, they couldn't trace them and find them. And
But
there were
one
probably phone
man,
booths on every corner, unlike now, where
right? Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
now, antiques.
Right. Our kids wouldn't know what to do with a phone booth if they found one.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
And they sure as hell wouldn't have a quarter in their pocket.
No.
So one man called Mrs. Grimes. He told her that he killed her daughters. He was boasting about it, about how he killed them. He gave her details about the case that hadn't been released to the public. And the police, tried to track that and track him down. They had absolutely no luck with it. A year after the Grimes sisters died, there was another murder in another part of Illinois, a 15-year-old named Bonnie Lee Scott.
Yeah.
And not too long after her murder, that same dude called Mrs. Grimes and bragged to her about killing Bonnie Lee Scott. And the one thing that she said about him is that he had a very distinctive voice and that she just wouldn't forget, and
Yeah,
some people do. I understand that, some people
for
do.
sure.
Also, Mrs. Grimes was no dummy. She was on top of this
No,
like nobody's business.
she was on the police. Some of the stuff I read about how much she was on them like no other. I loved it.
Hmm.
It was great.
Absolutely. Well, she made them let her sit in on some questionings
Yeah.
because she wanted to interrogate some people and get her own answers.
Well,
And
because
it sounds like,
particularly the guy that said he was out partying with them, because she was just like, that
uh-huh.
did not happen. That is not my daughter's.
Hmm.
She was mad over that one.
Hmm. Right. Oh, yeah. Well, the way they tried to make her daughters out to be harlots in the news
It was
was
terrible.
terrible. The way their family was treated is just horrifying. But so here's what's really weird about that, though. There was another girl who came forward who claimed
Yeah.
that she was with those men and her daughters, but she got away.
Yeah.
And she didn't come forward for a long time. So her name was, let's see, I don't know. I don't have her name, but she spoke to a retired cop that had been working on this case for a long time. She said she was in the car too, and she got away before the girls died. She was terrified. She never came forward until many, many, many years later and spoke to Ray Johnson. So Ray Johnson is a retired Chicago cop who is still working this case.
Yeah.
He basically is retired and now just works Chicago cold cases and writes books about them. So he is currently still on this case and really
Yeah.
believes that the answers are out there. We just haven't put all of the puzzle pieces together. But so this woman contacted Ray Johnson and told him, that she was there. She was with the girls as well. She got away, was terrified that he would come find her, that there would be retribution if she told anybody. So she never did. But the thing she said to Ray Johnson that really stood out to him, that's not even a word, stuck out to him was that the man that was driving the car had a very distinctive voice. She used the exact same wording that Mrs. Grimes did. And again, that was not a fact that had been released to the public.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, it's possible that she's, bananas and made that up, it is.
Or
But
it's two people with distinctive voices,
True. Yeah, totally.
Or it's
so,
the same guy. Who knows?
Yeah, we just don't know if that did or didn't. But
I would think if she was just like looking for attention, she would have said something right after. But
yeah, me too.
To wait all that time.
Yeah, me too.
Why would you then come forward unless it really did happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. And you think about her and oh my God, what she must have gone through, what she has gone through in her lifetime, knowing that happened, and knowing what she did know and never being brave enough to be able to release it. I mean, my heart does really go out to her if it indeed she was involved. However, I mean, I will say that nobody that witnessed the girls getting in the car at the police station had any, nobody had mentioned another girl. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they didn't pick her up somewhere else, or not at the police station, sorry, at the movie theater. So,
Yeah.
lots of witnesses saw the girls getting into a car with two men. No one said that there was another girl. But again, yeah, she could have already been in the car,
She could
or
have.
she could have been picked up afterwards. So
Yeah.
that's kind of neither here nor there. But here's where this case just gets really weird, if it's not weird enough for you guys yet, right?
Yeah.
Many, many witnesses, including friends of the girls, have talked about seeing the girls for weeks after they died in Chicago. They were seen at movie theaters. They were seen at ice cream parlors. They were seen at restaurants, at hotels. Many witnesses reported seeing them on a city bus. A security guard said they asked him for directions on the morning of December 29th. Classmates had seen them. Some classmates even had claimed that they had spoken to them.
Yeah. Phone calls.
And yet then they find them and decide that they died a few hours after they disappeared. So, what in the actual hell? But one other really weird thing. On January 14th, so this was a week before the bodies were discovered. So the girls had been dead now for 10-ish days. The phone in Patricia's classmate Sandra's house rang sometime around midnight, and her mother answered the phone, and the caller instantly hung up. And then the phone rang again a few minutes later, and this time a tiny, small, frightened voice asked for Sandra. And before mom could get Sandra out of bed and get her on the line, the caller had hung up. But Sandra's mother swears to God that was Patricia Grimes.
Yeah.
She says that Patricia Grimes, that is her voice, and that she'd called their house many, many times. These girls were very close, and that was her. She called.
Yeah.
But, science says she'd been dead for 2 weeks at that point.
Yeah.
Very, very strange. So that's where the paranormal twist of this story comes in, because all of the sightings are just so wild. And it's not as if, it's not as if everybody was just trying to get in on the media action. I'm sure some people were. I mean, I'm not,
Right.
going to be naive about it and deny that. I'm sure that's true. But not everybody was. A lot of people very sincerely believed that they had seen them, particularly the security guard,
Yeah.
who very sincerely believed he had seen them. But so many people seeing them all over town in so many different factions that are like, why are they saying these girls are missing? They're right here. So that is crazy. But, before we get into the psychic analysis, I'm curious if you have any other facts or anything you want to bring to the table.
I think mostly what I want to share during the psychic analysis, other than I just want to say that I just hate the way this case was handled from day one. They screwed it up.
Yeah.
One weird thing they did is they brought in a bunch of different medical examiners to do the autopsies. So it was like a group of men who were supposedly supposed to agree. That is not how this usually works. One person with a team helping them does it, because that muddies the waters so much. I think that was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because then they all had to agree, and the one guy who didn't agree got fired. So how do you know what they really thought? That there was some bureaucratic stuff going on there that I thought was not okay at all.
Entirely. Yeah.
And then all this stuff that happened with the media and treating them like they were party girls and out, running and stuff with zero proof. There was absolutely no proof of that at all.
Yeah.
And so it
and quite the
changed
opposite. Anyone who knew them and knew their family said the absolute opposite, that that's not who these girls were at all.
Right. And then that was used as kind of some excuse for quite a while, that, oh, well, they were just bad girls out being bad. And I don't care who you are. And if you are out partying and you get killed, you still don't deserve to get killed. I mean, that's not right.
Right.
And the way that was handled, I think, was poorly done. And then I also think there was no connections made between the three boys who died the year before, then the Grimes girls, and then the Scott girl. There's murders were very similar, but it doesn't appear from what I read that they were really investigated as connected.
Yeah.
And that seems strange to me. Although, I have to keep going back to, this is 1956.
Right.
And, the way that these things are handled now is completely different. I also read
Yeah.
that there were a bunch of jurisdictional problems with
Yes.
who really was supposed to investigate this. There was some battle
Yep.
over that. There was some poor
Mhm.
communication between different jurisdictions. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of bureaucratic stupid stuff that went on that I think
Mhm.
really screwed up the very beginning of this case,
Yeah.
that made it
Yeah.
so hard to determine really what happened.
Yeah. Yep. I will agree with all of that. Yeah, I'd read that too, that there were there was really some pretty unprofessional behavior
Yeah.
in law enforcement about this case because of people wanting to be, you know, wanting to have their piece of the pie essentially, and that
Yeah.
probably partly was because of the media storm as well.
Uh-huh. And because this was so unusual at the time, like this was a very
Yeah.
sensational thing that had happened. And, unfortunately, the murder of two young women thrown off to the side of the road is kind of a daily occurrence in the world we live in now. But
Yeah.
at the time, I think that there were definitely people that were trying to profit from it.
Oh yeah, yeah, without a doubt. It's extremely sad. It's very sad to me that Patricia Grimes, or sorry, that the mom, not Patricia, went to her grave without any answers, which has
Right?
happened so many times.
It has. But can you imagine living with that for the
Yeah.
rest of your life, that you do not know what happened to your children?
Yeah.
I,
Well, and they're the siblings too, because there were
yeah.
siblings. It's not they weren't her only children. You
That's right.
know.
They went out looking for them when they didn't come home
Yeah.
that night. Yeah, just the mental torture of
Yeah.
that is just unbelievable.
hmm Well, and there's one more little piece there actually that struck me. She had a bad feeling about the kids
Mm,
being before they had should have even been home. She had a bad feeling about them and sent the older two kids, the son and daughter, to the bus stop to wait for them to get them off the bus and walk them home.
that's
So
right.
she had already had something eerie had sunk into her, which I
Mhm.
felt like was really interesting because they weren't missing yet. They weren't even out of the movie yet, and she was already had a feeling in her gut that something was wrong.
Yeah.
Which she's a mother. That's that mama's intuition kicking in, of course. But then, so we can talk about that more in the psychic analysis too, because I had a few thoughts on that. But
Yeah.
so I guess that takes me to this place. Are we ready to do the psychic analysis?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, so we are going to take a very brief break. And when we come back, we'll climb right into the psychic analysis.
Yes, we will.
All righty. Well, here we are talking about the Grimes case, of course. We're talking about Barbara and Patricia that were murdered in the 50s, teenage sisters, either 12 or 13, depending on who you talk to, and 15. So just, young girls who
Yeah.
were killed, thrown out of a car, it looked like, along the side of the road into a snowbank where they were found weeks later. So that's the case we've been discussing, and we are ready for the psychic analysis. And so Christy and I both, of course, have worked as professional psychics for many, many years. Anything we look at is going to have a psychic, analysis to it in some way or another, whether it's,
Right.
any kind of criminal case or just, a conversation with a friend, because it's just who we are. It's what we do. But, and of course, true crime paranormal, that's what we're doing. We're doing the true crime first and then bringing in the psychic aspects, talking about the paranormal pieces second. So here we are. So, Christy, what the hell? What you got?
Right. Okay. Well, so I wanted to tune into this case before I read anything about it. Before I knew the story. And I did that last night, just kind of, to get a feel for what this is. And the very first thing that came to my mind was a space clearing that you and I did several years ago. It was the house with the big Great Dane. And I will never forget this place because they had this giant dog. He was so cool. But he was clearly a very misbehaved dog because there were pee pads all over the place, including pee pads taped to the walls. Remember that?
I've never
Oh,
forgotten
I
that.
thought those poor
Yeah.
people. What have they taken on here? Yeah. So
Mhm.
anyway, we were called out to that house because they were hearing a child crying in their house at night. And it was
Mhm.
really, really upsetting. And they
Mhm.
just,
Crying for her mom.
yeah, it
Crying
was,
for
and
her mom.
it was awful. Like, it was
Mhm.
really, really upsetting, and they just did not know what to do. So
Mhm. Well, and they were
we,
on the brink of divorce. Like,
yeah,
their lives were a disaster. They
yeah.
were on the brink of divorce. They were a financial wreck. Like, everything had
There's
just gone to
pee pads
hell for
taped to the
them
walls. I mean, it was it was really bad.
since they had moved into this house. Like, things
Yeah,
had gone to
yeah,
shit in their lives. Yeah.
they had.
Yeah.
So we did what we do, which is to walk through the house and out onto the property to get a feel for what's going on and trying to figure it out. And you did some mediumship and determined that
Mhm.
there was a spirit of a little girl hanging out on the property, and the back of their property butted up against a railroad track.
Yeah.
And what happened is that this little child was killed. She lived, her mother was a servant that worked on the train, and she lived there with her mother. She had been killed by a man on the train, and her body thrown off the track, thrown,
Mhm.
thrown off the train there at that property. And that's where she got stuck. So,
Mhm.
one thing that happens, and we've worked on many cases like this, where if you die suddenly or in a way that is shocking to you, sometimes you don't cross all the way over. You get stuck in some kind of in between land where
Mhm.
time doesn't really mean anything. You don't really know where you are. You're confused. You don't understand what's happening. And so this little girl had been waiting all this time for her mother, who was
Yeah.
long dead at this point.
Yeah.
And we did what we do, and we helped to cross her over and send her to her mother. And that's a big part of clearing houses and helping spirits move on. But that was
Yeah.
my first hit before I even read the story about the
Hmm.
Grimes sisters, is that there's a connection here. And so I feel like that it is exactly what it appears to me to be, that two men picked them up, that they were assaulted and murdered and thrown off to the side of the road, that is exactly what happened. And that then they wandered around the city where they lived, trying to find home. They, didn't they ask the security guard for directions?
Yeah.
Like, they were confused, they didn't understand.
Mhm.
This was, now I think, and this is a terrible thing to say, but I think if two men picked you up and wouldn't let you out of their car, you would know you were about to die, right?
Yeah.
Like that in this world. But that time, that was not so common. And I do
Right.
feel like what happened to them was sudden, and it wasn't expected on their part in any way, and that they didn't immediately cross over. I do think that they did, though. I feel like they crossed
Mhm.
after their bodies were found.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot, that once a
Mhm.
body is identified, then, sort of they get the message and are able to move on.
Yeah.
But I feel like they wandered
Yeah.
around, they called the friend, they went to places that were familiar to them, like the movie theater, trying to
Mhm.
figure out where they were and what had happened. And they were in a very confused state.
Mhm.
And once their bodies were found and they were identified, I feel like then they were able to move on. So
Yeah.
that's my
So
analysis
essentially
of it.
didn't yeah. So essentially didn't know they were dead.
Yeah, didn't know they were dead for a little while, which you and
Yeah.
I know, we have
Mhm.
worked in many, many cases where that's
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
Somebody dies
That
suddenly.
happens.
I worked a
Or
case
violently.
a few
Yeah.
years ago where someone had a seizure on a ski lift and fell off and died.
Oh.
And they were coming to family members and friends,
Mhm.
hysterical. And some people, and not
Mhm.
everybody is able to perceive when that's happening. But a friend came to
Yeah.
me and said, "This is happening. She's screaming and crying. She's hysterical. She doesn't know what's wrong." Well, it happened so suddenly. There was
Yeah.
not a moment to process, "I'm
Mhm.
dying."
Yeah.
And I helped her move on. But it just sort of had that element to me, that's what
Mhm.
happened. And that's why the paranormal activity died down after they were identified and found,
Mhm.
is that then, okay, then they at some point figured out what had happened and moved on.
I absolutely agree with that because I do see them attending their funeral.
Hmm.
I feel like at that point they were
Yeah.
aware. Yes. Okay. Well, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's a really good analysis. I stepped back. I wanted to see why they got in that car
Yeah.
and what was happening at that time, and kind of, see if I could at least in some way witness the actual death and understand what happened. And so what they're showing me is that when they walked out of the theater, and absolutely hate that this is the answer because it seems so stereotypical to now, but to then it wasn't. Uh, the man with, I'm thinking, the distinctive voice approached them and said, "Your mother asked me to pick you up. There's been an accident." They thought that
Ugh.
he was taking them to their mom.
Hmm.
And I feel like they were just very trusting, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously this guy was out to party, you know? And I do think that he had somebody with him, but I'm going to tell you guys something really interesting about that. I feel like he killed him too.
Really?
I do. I do. I feel like these two men, so here's what I believe happened. I do think that they took these girls somewhere. I don't feel like they killed them in the car. I feel like they took them somewhere. It doesn't seem to me to be indoors. It looks to me like maybe it was out into a park or some other, outdoor place. I do
Hmm.
believe that both girls were sexually assaulted. I think that was a miss
Yeah,
in the coroner's report.
for sure.
That yes, that it's what it reads. They, it's exactly what appears to happen. They took these little girls, they took them somewhere, they did sexually assault them. However, the coroner's report said that there was no sign of drugs or alcohol in their system. I do believe that chloroform or something like that was used.
Hmm.
um, I think that
Something that
that's
they wouldn't necessarily have
mhm.
tested for.
Right, or maybe could even catch. Like chloroform comes and goes pretty quickly, is my understanding. But
Yeah.
there was something used. There were no defensive wounds on these girls, and I feel like they really didn't fight back. But it looks to me like when they drug them out of the car in really what looks to me like some kind of a park, or maybe
Well, and they
it's a
were
park of
found
some
near a park.
sort.
Their bodies were found near a
Yeah.
park.
This was like back in the North 40 of a park where, in the dark, where nobody was in the winter, where nobody was going.
Right.
But I see them dragging these two out of the car. I do feel like chloroform or something was used to, to disable the girls because they didn't fight back. I
Yeah.
feel like they did sexually assault them both. How did they kill them? I still feel like it was some kind of oxygen deprivation.
I just feel this heavy pressure on my chest as you're
Mhm.
talking about it,
Mhm.
like kneeling or laying on top of them until they, and if they
Mhm.
were already knocked out, I don't think it would take very long because they were children, they were
Yeah.
small.
Yep. These are both men that had killed before. I believe that both of these men were involved in killing the boys a year before.
Mhm.
I I think that those deaths were not as on purpose as these ones were.
Mhm.
The deaths the year, or the time before, I don't know if it was exactly a year, but before, with the three teenage boys, that was a little bit different. That was not meant to be a murder, but it turned into one. Uh, I feel like they were trying to maybe mug these boys, or maybe they were trying to assault these boys. The boys fought back. It actually turned into a bloodbath where they killed all three of them.
Mhm.
Little different, but that's how these fools got a taste for, wanting to kill.
Yeah.
And so these girls, this was much more planned out. I asked about the third girl in the car. I do not get a good hit on it. I don't know.
I know. I
I don't know.
I still kind of feel like she was there, or at least there for a short period. I don't
Yeah.
think that they hurt her in any way. I do feel like she got away quickly.
Yeah. Something. Because
Something happened there.
yeah, she wasn't there by the time they got to the park.
No, no.
But so at any rate, so then of course, I do feel like they put them in the car. I feel like one of them sat in the back seat, and basically they got to a spot where there were no other cars, and it was, quiet enough that he literally just, shoved them both, these bodies, out of the car. But you got to think about, I mean, that's not, how strong are you? I mean, these girls weren't big girls, but still, they were big
Dead
men to
weight.
be
I mean,
able to,
that's
yeah, to just toss dead weight bodies out of the car.
yeah.
Uh, but he did, though. He forced him, kicked him, whatever, out of the car. Gross, sorry. But that's, and then they took off. I feel like, so, but then here's what I feel like happened. I feel like a few months down the road, there was actually a skirmish between these two men where old distinctive voice killed that guy.
Mhm.
That was his next victim, was this guy. He felt like he was oh, okay, that's what I'm hearing. He was bragging. He was
Mm.
bragging, to getting a little too close to telling, bragging a little bit about, "Yeah, I've killed someone," and stuff like that, like in bars and stuff like that, that made this guy nervous about it, and he actually ended up killing him and abandoning him in a hotel room.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know that was actually in Illinois. I think it was a little ways away from, the action, obviously, and then a year
Mhm.
later, he did kill the other girl
The Scott
in
girl. Yeah.
Illinois, the Scott girl, yep.
Mhm.
So then I was asking, has he killed again? Did he kill again after that? And I'm being told that yes, he did, but he moved to a completely different part of the country.
Yeah.
And so he moved to New York City. He moved up into the New York area, and
Um,
he did kill a few more times. And
and at that time,
so,
they would never have been connected to one another. Even
no,
now, they don't always get connected to one another when they happen in different states.
yeah. So he wasn't a serial killer when this began. But he became one real quickly. But again, I feel like they were his fourth and fifth victims. So,
Mhm.
so I do believe that he killed at least 10 times in his lifetime. I don't believe that he was ever caught.
Wow.
So those are my hits on the killer himself.
Mhm.
So it makes me sick and sad to think that just by telling them a pretty, innocent lie, there's been an accident. Your mother wants us to come and get you and take you home,
Mhm.
was enough for these sweet girls who were trusting to just jump in the car.
Well, and it makes sense to me also as to why they didn't immediately cross over, because they were not expecting this. This
Right.
was
Yeah.
a shock.
Hmm.
And that is certainly a time in which somebody doesn't necessarily make it all the way over. And I say
Hmm.
over as if it's like you're walking across a line. It's not, but
Right.
from this realm to another realm. Anyway, I think that really does track with that, because they would have been so stunned. This is not at all what they would have expected was going to happen.
No, no, not at all. And yeah, I don't think that getting in that car, it crossed either of their minds. It doesn't feel like it at all that they were in danger. They really thought that something had happened and mom had
Yeah,
sent, a friend. I'm a friend of your mother's. That
yeah,
neighborhood at the time was full of kids and adults who, looked out for each other, knew each other. I just don't think it was
yeah.
a stretch for them to think that that was
That could
just
be
the
true.
case. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I do think that's kind of where some of the stranger danger that we were taught as kids started,
sure.
because when we were kids, and I can remember our grandma saying stuff like that somebody will grab you and throw you in a ditch, I can remember
Hmm.
stuff like that. And that's
Yes,
where all of that fear over children being kidnapped and murdered started. I mean, not the only place, but I can
but
remember her
certainly one of
saying
them.
stuff like that.
I
Yeah.
do too. Yeah, very clear.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, and there was all of that talk of, if somebody we were so afraid of vans, it wasn't even funny, and
Oh, right.
even
Yeah, the white
now.
van, the whole.
Mhm. Well, even now, you see a beat up old white van in a parking lot, and you're like, "Ooh, there's a
What's
rapist
going on with
van,"
that
you
thing?
know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and it probably is probably not, but, that is absolutely what, we were raised. But that
yeah.
also those tactics, right? We were educated as kids about those tactics. If somebody
Yes.
says that there's an accident or that your mom sent them, unless you know them, you don't go. Um,
We had code
unless
words. Remember code words?
code words, yeah, yeah, yeah. On a side note, we had some friends whose code word for their kids was "heenie heiny ho."
Yes, we did. That's right.
I've laughed about that for years. What the hell?
I'd
But
forgotten
I think
about
that's a
that.
Pee Wee Herman thing. But anyway,
Yes, I think it was, which is really ironic. Anyway.
right? Yeah. But at any rate, yeah. So the code word, ladies and gentlemen, is "heenie heiny ho." If you hear
Yeah, there
that,
you go.
you're
Do
good to
not
go.
go with
Otherwise,
a
run like
stranger unless
hell.
they know the code word.
But yeah, there was a lot of that. But also for us, there was, the idea of somebody trying to lure you to a car with puppies or candy, or I have a
Mhm.
lost puppy. Will you help me look for it?
Yeah.
Those were all things we were educated on,
Yes.
because they had happened. But in the time of the Grimes sisters, they just weren't. These things weren't
Yeah.
really going down.
They
Yeah.
just didn't know that they couldn't trust people and couldn't trust adults, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, well, it's a terribly sad case, and their poor mom,
Yeah.
what a deal for her. But I think that on her part, she, I really do believe, helped the criminal justice system by continuing to be a voice, by continuing to speak out. I
Yeah.
think that she helped to hopefully create a little more awareness in the press of how to
Yeah.
treat cases like this and how not to. I feel like she made her mark in the world through this tragedy by helping to create a little more awareness and education. So, huge
Yeah.
props to her for being that person. She was
Definitely.
very, very strong. She was a straight up badass
Yeah. She was.
in the face of such a horrible tragedy.
Yeah. And it's an
Mm,
important reminder that just because you forget about something or it's no longer in the news doesn't mean that the family doesn't carry it every day.
every day. Yep. For the rest of their lives. I've
Yeah.
thought a lot about the siblings, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
because not only did they lose their sisters, but in a big sense, they lost their family because nothing was the
Yeah.
same ever again. So,
Yeah. And where it never resolved, there was never a
yeah.
resolution for them. That's really unfortunate.
Hmm. Well, and no matter where you go, you are that person. You're from that family, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah.
You'll never escape that ever.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, much love to that family, even yet. I'm sure the scars in that family line run deep and always will.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
so much love to them. As we close out this episode, Christy, I just wanted to give you a minute to talk a little bit about our Patreon, our YouTube. Just make sure everybody knows how to find us.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different ways to get involved with True Crime Paranormal. So we do have a Patreon. If you don't know what that is, you can become a patron of the show for a small fee. And if you do that, you get some extra content. So there are different levels on our Patreon that give you different amounts of it's extra episodes. One of them is an extra video episode that no one else gets. So if you're interested in that, you can find us at patreon.com, and we are True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. So you just go to Patreon and search for us. You'll find us there. We also have a YouTube video. So we're True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters on YouTube as well. So we do video, these podcasts, as well as do audio. So you can find the audio on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And of course, we are still getting out there on some of them. Some of them take a little while to show up.
Yeah.
But we're definitely out there on a lot of them now, and will be even more as we go. But if you like to watch the show, some people prefer video, and so we are putting those videos up on our YouTube channel too. So you're welcome to go there. And
Yeah.
of course, we have our True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters fan page and our discussion group. So if you want to get in there and talk about this case, you want to tell us what you think about it, what you know, if you want to tell us about another case we ought to cover, please do that. Hit us up on social. Oh,
Oh,
we're also on Twitter.
absolutely.
We're on Twitter and
Yeah.
Insta as well. So, find us
We are
everywhere.
tweeting it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So many ways to connect. I love it. Well, and I'm loving the discussion group, and I'm hoping that we see that just
Yeah.
really grow, because I love seeing everybody's perspectives and opinions about the cases, and that's a big thing to me. And ultimately, at some point in that group, we will start a few giveaways for people that are listening. We
Yes.
want to start giving away, some vinyl decals, t-shirts, things like that for True Crime Paranormal. So you guys know we're incubating, we're just birthing here. This is our second episode, but as we
Right.
grow, we'll definitely give you some opportunities for some swag as well, because we like it.
Heck yeah. We like
I
it. We know you will too.
I know, it just made me think, gosh, I show up to this show every week, basically usually with the same mug that I'm drinking my coffee out of. I think we need True Crime Paranormal mugs.
Yes, we do. Because look at my mug.
I know.
We do need True Crime Paranormal mugs.
Expect them forthcoming. I will get busy. So
Get right on that, vinyl person.
that's right. And then just maybe you guys that come over to, join the discussion group will have an opportunity to win one here or there.
Yeah. Good
So
idea.
yeah, we're all about giving stuff away and community, and
Yep,
we want
definitely.
we want you there. So
We do.
you are needed, you are wanted, and you are welcome. So
Mhm.
all righty. Well, next week I believe we are talking about the Malaysia flight, correct?
Yes, the missing Malaysia flight MH34 or something. Anyway, sorry, I'm
Henny
not
honey
looking right
ho.
at my notes.
Yeah.
Honey,
Henny
honey,
honey
ho.
ho.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, we all know what it is. It's the missing
Mhm.
Malaysian plane, and we're going to talk about the story, how it happened, and then we're going to give a big psychic analysis on what
Yeah.
we think happened, what we feel happened,
Whew.
and yeah, I
Go
know.
to work.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm really excited about it. It's one I've wanted to cover for a long time, just
Mhm.
because really, I think at this point, the only answer about it can be paranormal. I mean,
Yeah.
where else could that plane freaking be, right? Okay.
Somebody knows. Somebody knows.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll be us next week.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being here and listening. Of course, you have been listening to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. We appreciate you. Please like, subscribe, share, come chat with us. Let's play. Take care, you guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Bye, everybody.